Who am I? To think and to believe that I'm divine. Powerful, beautiful, and an offspring of the divine. I am the image and likeness of the divine. And so who am I to speak clearly to who I really am? I am spirit. I am soul. And I use this physical form. I am the being of light, here to fulfill love that's unlimited. Om Shanti, everyone. Good evening. How are you? Nice to be with you once again. How sweet it is that the COVID situation has brought us together in unique ways. We also predict that in the future we won't even need technology to connect us. We'll just have the power of our pure thoughts. We'll think of each other with a pure feeling. If we have a personal need, then we'll send that thought as a personal request, and it will just show up. Aren't you looking forward to those times when you'll be able to trust the power of your pure thinking, knowing that you're going to be provided for and that the universe is definitely here to take care of you? It's quite an interesting feeling to have. And in a world like today, where trust is such a rare commodity, we have to really dig deep inside of ourselves now to even begin to work out, do I even have self-trust? I looked at my life, I've been looking a lot at my life since this exile or incubation period. And, there's so many good things, and there are so many areas that can also be refined and altered. In our morning class at 6 o'clock today, we had a wonderful chit-chat with Sister Jenna, who's the international director of the Brahma Kumaris. And I just asked her, what do you think this period really has to offer us? And she said it so simply. She says, mastery of the self. That if you have a thought, the thought is important, it's valuable, it's a thought you want to have. And if a particular thought emerges in your mind and is not a thought that you have, then you would use the power of your own inner will to say, this is not serving me, this is not what I want to think, and move it out of your consciousness in a second. And I said to myself, that is so beautiful, that we could really develop this practice right now to be able to really think what we want to think and feel what we want to feel. I had mentioned to you after I was with, I think it was Dot's program yesterday on the Global Silent 5 minutes. I hope you enjoyed that. We did it today, by the way, at 9:30. And it was such a beautiful energy. And again, the future has the potential to be so golden aged, but we have to put the energy into it. But anyway, in our talk yesterday with Dot, um, I was really sharing that, yesterday I wasn't feeling so great. I'm fine. Even yesterday I was fine, but I'm looking at myself from a perspective of when my whole world just feels completely aligned to divinity and to sacredness and to grace and to beauty. And yet, even if I have issues that are not going my way, my internal compass knows it's also a means of pushing me forward. But I wasn't having those feelings. So I was saying that I just don't feel my best yesterday. And in my openness and honesty, I got the response and the experience of it this morning at 6:15 when Sister Jenna gave the answer that this time period is to really build self-mastery, that you really are in charge with what you want to think, how you want to think, why you want to think what you're thinking, because knowing that thoughts are energy. Thoughts create your future. Thoughts are really the breath of life. And so if my thoughts are really based on waste or negative things, or if even while you're at home right now and you just don't know what else to do with yourself, write a letter to yourself. Write a letter to God. Clear out the issues in your heart. I know you've heard me say this quite a number of times, but it's a big assignment. It's like going into a major closet to clear up things that are also quite sentimental for you. And you don't necessarily feel like throwing them away because your thoughts feel like, oh, I'm going to use this again. I just trust that I'll use this again. So it's an interesting period for all of us. Very, very interesting. Our conversation today on trust is a big one. What is trust? I've had a narrative where um, even when I was a young girl, I've had very deep friendships that were based on a tremendous amount of trust. Whether we were doing everything right or everything naughty, we trusted that we would be fine, even in our naughtiness. And I found that it was when I came into my spirituality, it was a different definition of trust. And I can't say that I totally understand it yet, but it was like the trust was connected to a deeper part of my character, which I had not served prior to coming into spirituality. And I was still living very much on the surface, and I was quite comfortable with my human existence, not with my awakened existence. But when I came into spirituality, my awakening, I'm pretty sure I came in trusting, open-eyed, bushy tail, tell me what you're going to do. I'm totally in awe of what this could be and what this means. And I had bumped into a particular scene in my life where I felt a lack of trust. And it became a big order that it, you are valuable only if you're trustworthy. And there are times that I could feel like it would hit something very deep in my psyche, which I don't feel like I connected with in this lifetime, but it might have been something from my past. And I remembered grappling with that for quite a long time and asking myself, do I even trust Jenna? Do I trust what she would think, what she would say? And do I trust the choices that she makes? And over the course of almost 30 years on my path of spirituality, I can't even believe I've even lasted that long, to be very honest with you. And even a lot of my young friends back in the early days of my spiritual awakening, they used to almost have a bet, oh, she will only last for like 2, 3 years max. And in those days, I was like, okay, I'll go for the 2, 3 years. We were so innocent in those times. But I can't believe it's almost 30 years. And I still want to work on this whole energy of trust. I trust myself to a great extent. And yet, dot, 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 there's so much room for improvement. And you might notice that in your relationships, in situations where there's a team dynamics, in your country, you trust people in particular ways, but then in other ways you don't trust them. Like one of the big factors of trust that I feel in our family and in our team dynamics is we will get the job done. We might not do it perfect, but we will get the job done. And there's something very powerful in knowing that we, I don't want to call staff our family, we show up knowing it's for God and it's going to get done. We might not have any experience in what we're doing, but there's a trust that God has our back. This is for God's beauty to be revealed to the world. It's my fortune to expand my learning curve and develop my abilities and my skills. But it's even my fortune to uplift the life of even just one human being. Just one. If I can, and if we can be of support to one human being, and that one human being emerges and makes a difference on the planet, imagine the return of that. So our discussion today on trust, I think will be a nice one. So take out your pen and your paper or your notebook, except for Sister Gita, no pen and paper, because she likes to make a lot of noise and she has this way of just making the paper kringle as she's writing. But take out your pen and paper, and or your recorder or your notebook, and it might be useful today's session for you. And by the way, Sister Gita is doing much better today. She had a rough 2 days ago, but today her face is glowing, her eyes are sparkling, her energy is very angelic, and so I'm just wanting to let everybody know she's doing good today. So lots of your good wishes are working on her, and we're happy about that. And we trust that she's going to break through this, and she has the capacity and the mental power to make the impossible possible. Thank you. And that was Daddy Janki's blessing on her too. Daddy Janki says, Gita, you will make the impossible possible. You've been doing that, haven't you? Anyway, enjoy this video right now. See you back shortly.
But I agree with that sentiment. Being trustworthy is an essential part of my self concept. Sure, I want to be loved, but to be known as someone you can count on is even more important to me. And if you think about it, love is built on trust. Virtually every communication and business management textbook I've ever read extols the virtues of trust in relationships, whether those relationships be romantic, friendship, familial, or workplace. But rarely do they devote more than a couple of paragraphs to the concept. Why? It's likely because trusting and being trustworthy can be hard, and hard to define. That's what this video will focus on, a discussion of what trust is, including the elements of trust, why trust is important, and two different types of trust. One way to look at trust is to consider the elements or behaviors that contribute to the concept of trust. Intent to do well by others, but intent by itself is not enough. Character, being honest, sincere, and behaving with integrity. Transparency, arguably this is related to character. You are open in your communication with others and are not operating with hidden agendas. Competence or capabilities, your ability to do things. reliability and consistency, keeping your promises, meeting your obligations. Notice that in this view, all must be combined and overlap. Let's take a different approach, as suggested by social psychologist Morton Deutsch. Realize that trust involves some level of risk, and that risk has consequences, which can pay off in harmful or beneficial ways. And if we were to diagram this, there is an expectation that there is more to be lost from the harmful consequences than will be gained from the beneficial consequences. You recognize that those consequences, beneficial or harmful, are dependent on the actions of the other person. You will trust when you are confident that the other person will behave so that beneficial consequences result. Let's consider a few examples. Many parents, myself included, went through agonizing times when their children learned to drive. Even now, just thinking about it causes my heart to race. But having another driver in the house definitely has major benefits. However, the scary thoughts of accidents often push those benefits to the side. Much more to be lost if these harmful consequences were to come to pass than would be gained by the benefits. So we do what we can do to increase our confidence that will allow us to trust that the new driver will behave in a way that will result in those positive consequences. Another example, say you were thinking about disclosing something personal to a friend. This self-disclosure could have the benefit of deepening your friendship, but you are also running a risk of being ridiculed or having that information used against you in the future. You're not likely going to self-disclose until you are relatively sure that your friend will respond positively. Okay, so now we know that trust refers to the general belief that people can rely on each other. Why is trust important? On an interpersonal level, we need to feel physically and emotionally safe. We have to feel like we can be who we truly are with someone. It's exhausting to put up a front all the time. When people trust each other, they are more willing to openly express their thoughts, feelings, reactions, opinions, information, and ideas. When trust level is low, people tend to be evasive, dishonest, and inconsiderate in their communication. On a task-related level, we have to be able to count on others to survive. In a group situation, the more people can trust each other, the more effectively they will work together. By trusting others, we can share resources, we can divide up the work, and we can give and accept help. In general, by trusting each other, we are able to accomplish mutual goals. We can help each other. That leads us quite nicely into the two different types of trust: interpersonal trust and task-related trust. Interpersonal trust is the belief that the other will not do anything to harm your interests or welfare. That means keeping your confidences and being committed to the relationship. Task-related trust is the belief in someone's ability to do what needs to be done and that they will do it, or what I'll call follow through. Both types of trust are evident in your various relationships, and it's not always a black and white assessment. Let me use my husband as an example. I trust him on most things, but maybe not everything. And there are degrees as well. I know he has my best interests at heart. So there is interpersonal trust. Does that mean he won't occasionally let something slip that we discussed in private? And while I know that he has the ability and the willingness to take our children to their doctor's appointments, I also know that he can lack follow through at times. Consider your working relationships. Do you trust that your coworkers will show up when they are scheduled, that they have the ability and skills to do what needs to be done, and that they will actually do it by the deadline? That would be task-related trust. But you often engage in small talk and sometimes large talk with your coworkers. Can you trust them to keep any privileged information you share private? So interpersonal trust is present even in task-oriented relationships. If your question now is, how can I increase the likelihood that others find me trustworthy? That's a question for another video.
Welcome back. I thought that that video would have really created a lot of thoughts in terms of the whole concept of trust and how we deal with our own personal trust factor. I hope you liked that very much. It was very, very useful, and I know it will be, if not now, later on in the future. Not now, later on in the future. So trust can sometimes feel like it's more valuable than love. But when you actually have trust, there is love. I appreciated the opening slide of this program because I've often felt, and maybe you too, if you don't feel trusted by individuals that you value, you don't feel loved. Have you ever had that feeling? And feel free to comment in the comment field as well. If you don't feel that the person trusts you, there's an element within that experience that there's also a lack of love. So how high is this virtue and this value of trust? And what I'd like us to do during this conversation and this time together is to come from the place of, there are four main pillars that I look at where trust is concerned. And on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, I'd like you to write that down now. And if Santosh could type it into the comment field. 1 is, how much do I trust myself? So trust in self. So on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. Number 2, to what extent do I trust God? Trust in God. How much do I trust God has my back? The third aspect is, how much do I trust people? We sometimes look at the trust in our family unit, the trust in our workplace, the trust with our government, trust in people on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. And last but not least, how much do I trust in the drama? How much do I trust in my destiny, my future? So trust in self, trust in God, trust in, sorry, trust in self, trust in God, trust in others, and trust in our future. Sister Gita was just about to walk on camera with something that, so Santosh just got her. So that's why I had to pause for a little. Some of the benefits of home-produced programs. So these four areas I want you to focus on during our discussion, okay? And the first and foremost one is, do you trust you? Do you trust what your thoughts are saying to you? Do you trust the words that are going to fly at your mouth at the right time? Do you trust the choices that you will make will always move you into power? I mean, we usually make choices because they are going to make you empowered. And if your definition of power is a debilitating definition of power, it can be very damaging. Say, for example, food. I trust that if I keep eating this chocolate, it's going to satisfy the craving that I have. But it also can give me diabetes. It can also make me obese or overweight. And so, we have to be very mindful of what areas of trust we actually channel our energy in. Do I trust I'm no good? So I only think and make decisions that will prove to you I'm not good enough. Or do I trust that I am good enough and my thoughts and my words will lead me towards being good enough, not only for myself but for you. So I want you to hold the base of self-trust as we go through some of the slideshows. So again, trust is so huge that it could be even bigger than love. Let's move on, Santosh, to the next one. Okay, so when we look at the elements of trust, something that we always ask ourselves in the Brahma Kumaris community is, would Baba, would God do this? What would God want? And could I have the slide up one more time? What would God want? What would Baba want? Which is how we call God here. And so that would help to clear out the intention behind the thought that I'm having, or what I'm about to say, or what I'm about to do. And based on the quality of that intention, it tends to shape the vibrations of my character. So a lot of us are not aware that the vibrations or the aura that encompasses my presence has a lot to do with the energy of intent. Did you know that? So when we look at our characteristics, or we look at the way our personality reveals itself, there is a big need for goodness in character, where you come up with maybe the highest principles, the highest values, the highest virtues. In Indian culture, many times when families bring their children together to determine if they're going to be a good match to be married for the rest of their lives, they will check the character, the sanskar of the person to see, can my child spend the rest of their lives with this person based on their characteristics. So it's interesting to see how the deepest intention shapes the kind of a person that we generate, we represent. And in order to really refine and know if my character is good, and by the way, tomorrow's session, we're going to focus on what is a good character. But, for today, when we look at what character is, the question is, how honest are you? And how transparent are you? Some of us are transparent in one way, like I'm known to be pretty open, maybe to a fault to some extent. But I feel like I don't want people to put me on a pedestal or make me their guru. I'm so much more focused on, we're on this journey together, and God's our mother and our father, and can we walk together with this? Can you and I learn? Yes, I have experience in areas more than you, maybe, and in that sense, I'm here for you. I'm here to guide. I'm here to support. I'm here to teach. But there are areas in which you're also very strong in. And I want to be guided by you in that area. So to check your transparency in such a way that you're opened, in which people can expect, yeah, no matter what, she's going to say the real thing, or if she doesn't do this, you know what she's thinking. If she's quiet, you know what I mean. I told you a few months ago I was in India and I was in the line, and there was a lecture, and somebody who was behind me was basically sharing something quite, was just not healthy. It was disingenuous about the person who gave the lecture. And what surprised me was I have seen this person in front of this person as if they were best friends. And the person who was given the lecture had spoken so many nice things about this person. And I was flabbergasted by that moment in my life. And I turned around and I said, wow, who is this soul, or who are all of we? And it's like this kept coming up in my vision, wolf in sheep clothing. So, when there isn't trust, you can feel it, there's something there. And yet, at the same token, there are people who seem to be loving and liking each other, and who are deeply connected and are talking a lot of good things without even knowing. But that person doesn't have your best interest. I don't know if you have any idea. That's not a person that I would. And it's funny that, remember, that same person had done something similar to me. I had hired a car, and the car was mine. But something had happened to their car, and they had jumped into my car to try to convince me that that was their car, even though I knew it was mine. So I think it just might be the person's personality, now that I'm putting it all together. Long story short, transparency is a very important aspect to the whole trust factor. Let's go to the next element. To be competent and to have a particular capacity in an area that you are responsible for is huge. If you're a doctor and you are there to help your patients to be healthier, or you're a surgeon and you're there to make your patients better and to, go into their bodies and transform it and take out what's not well, and you aren't competent, you're going to lose a lot of patients. And if you're not open to the learning curve as to why you're losing so many patients when you go in and do operations in them, you're not building your capacities, that you're repeating the same limitation, and somehow you're missing the opportunity to see where you're going wrong. So you have to check, to what extent are you competent in what you do. I've been checking inside as I speak or in things that I do. Like, I'm always seeing that there's a need for adjustment. Come from a purer place, Jen. Just be more soul conscious. Be more soul aware. And I can feel there's another tendency that tends to come forward. And at the same time, and of course, if I'm on stage or I'm performing, you feel like there's something more that you feel you have to give to an audience, or you have to amplify yourself more just to maybe make them feel better or to maybe create an image for you. And I remembered when we first started the America Meditating Radio, Sister Gita, remember that? The first week or two, because I would listen to some of the radio shows, and even though my major was mass communications, I hadn't used it for a long time. But even in that, you're learned to kind of pump up the energy just so you can get individuals into the vortex and have them believe you. And I started that in the show for the first week on the AM radio, America Meditating Radio. And after the first week, I'm sitting in meditation, my 4 o'clock in the morning meditation. And I'm talking to Baba, and I go, I don't know if I can sustain such an energy. It's not who I am. And he says, well, it's okay. You don't have to sustain, which is not true. Just be yourself. And whoever will tune in and support that energy, that's who's supposed to. So then Sister Gita and I just went, not really flatline, but this is just who we are. Welcome to America Meditating Radio. But then before it'd be like, oh, and welcome to America Meditating Radio. And I was thinking there was no way I was ever going to be able to sustain that energy. So it might be a little monotone, but it's real and it's genuine. So I was competent in checking myself and knowing that my capacity would build at a deeper spiritual level if I came from a purer place in the choices that I made. And of course, one of the most important elements, especially when you're working with a team of people, is your consistency and reliability. When someone isn't consistent in their patterns and their way of performance, then you don't feel that you can rely on them very much. It becomes very hard to move forward. So now let's pause, and I'll ask Santosh to take us to the next slide. As you look through all of these factors, do you see your self-trust in all of them? Intent, character, transparency, your competency, your capacity, your consistency, and your reliability? Take a minute and just go inside of yourself and check. To what extent are your intentions pure? And how has that played out in your character? And is there anything in you that is hidden? Is there an agenda? Or are you transparent? With your kids, with your husbands, with your wife, with your boss, with your friends, and here's the best one for Indian communities, with your in-laws. Are you transparent with them? Interesting, right? So do you have that self-trust? Think about it. No rush. We're not going anywhere. That was happy. She's growling. So, next, as we move on, when you look at trust, it tends to, as they say, involve some risk. You're cautious, you're careful, and it depends on the actions of maybe a lot of people. One is self-trust, and based on your self-trust, it determines the way you treat your relationships. For those who are my very good friends, if you happen to tune in, you know I tend to speak my mind and tell you exactly how I'm feeling. And the reason why I do that is that in my friendships, I trust you, that I can be myself. Whether I'm really recognized as a spiritual authority or not, the fact that we're trusting each other is important, and I tend to show up with that energy with you all the time. And I've often appreciated my friends who just accept me as I am, and in the same way that I do with you too. And even in the spiritual community that I'm in service to, I want to thank each and every one of you who's been by my side and who has really built trust in my leadership, knowing that it's always going to come from a very genuine and authentic place. I know that there's some people who like the authority and the guru role, where you feel subservient and you bow to the person and you make them bigger and better than you are. And I know that there's some value in that too, but unfortunately I'm not that type of leader. I am more into the servant leadership, in us walking together on the path and learning from each other. And I feel that that's where your power and your strength comes from too. So it depends on the individual. How are you designed to really lead? And do you trust the people who are in positions of leadership for your life? And so I want to thank my community that shows that time and time again, in many ways, more than one, of their trust for me. So let's move on. It involves some risks. So the check, you have to kind of check sometimes. Is my trust in this person going to be beneficial for me, or is it going to be harmful for me? So a lot of times when I put my energy into a relationship, the thought that comes is, for me at least, are they going to assist in the task of God's revelation or God's love? Is this going to contribute to the beauty of God's world? And that's just my wiring. Everyone who has worked with me, whether they are a part of the Brahma Kumaris community or not, and I can put my life on this, they know that I've treated them the same, and that I keep looking at, how do we serve? How can we help humanity? How can we help humanity by offering who we are and what our skills are? So a lot of times I feel that if you trust and you take the risk in me as an instrument, things are just going to open up, because all I'm wired for at this particular point in my life is to make the world a better place. It's just how I am. And I've found that where my trust gets shaken is if I'm in a gathering or with a person who doesn't serve that purpose with me. So it's interesting how it can be a little bit, well, make it a little bit more purely intentional. So let's go back to the slide. So why is trust important is that we need to feel physically and emotionally safe. And that's a big thing in the society today. Trust is high when you have the safety to express thoughts, to have the feelings that you have, to be able to even do the reactions that you need to do, to share your opinion and not feel that you're being locked down. I used to be in a group of people that every time I gave my idea, oh my, it was like it was killed before it even finished coming out of my mouth. It was like, what is this? I thought my idea was just great. And especially as a creative person, you get the touchings from above, and they just need to flow out. There's no ownership to it. And so when you're in meetings and you're with a lot of people with different visions, different ideas, and you might be the main creative one and you're sharing things because you see it so clearly in the ethers, man, it gets killed in a second. So you feel your trust is high in a gathering where you can really share your opinion and your ideas without feeling that you're being disempowered. And that whenever you share information, is that information being used in a good way? Is it being trusted? Is it valued? Is it being honored? So look at these factors that would raise trust high again. Let's go to the slide. So when you can openly express thoughts, feelings, reactions, opinions, informations, and ideas, how many of us have relationships with people that you can do that? How many of you actually have a relationship where you feel that safe? Check on the scale from 1 to 10. So hold that for a minute. On a scale from 1 to 10, how many people in your life do you feel physically and emotionally safe with? That you can be all of this. And this isn't including authority figures like a mother or a father or necessarily a boss all the time. Sometimes we need a little restriction in our trust factor because we sometimes don't have the spiritual intelligence to know the fine line between becoming too familiar versus, being in my self-respect in a relationship of authority. But one of the things that I find very compelling, especially at this time, is how low the trust factor is in our world. You find that people are evasive. There's a lot of dishonesty. People are quite inconsiderate about the way that you feel. People don't show you who they really are. You always sense there's a motive behind why they're going to do what they're doing. So you can sense physically and emotionally you don't feel safe. And even in our country right now, there's a sense that we don't feel so safe. Is the information that I'm getting true? Is it useful for me? So I want you to hold for a moment this idea where trust is a low factor for you in your marriage, with your children, with your friends, colleagues at work, your government, even in your religion. Some people are having issues with their path and their spirituality or their religious journey. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how high is that? Interesting, isn't it? Let's go to the next one. So it's really profound when you think about this. When I can feel physically and emotionally safe, I'm like a child. Sometimes we look at Happy, she just bops around, hops around. Today we went to the meditation museum to water the plants, to get the mail, to sit in meditation, to put away the pots and plates and just put some life into the space. And I was just watching her. She was walking in front, just like Happy. Like, I've got mom and dad and uncle and auntie, everyone's fine. And I was just saying, she's so safe. And ever since this particular virus has come on the planet, she's been so resistant with going outside. And I'm going, what are you feeling? That she would feel this vibration, like, I don't feel safe. And then she would run back in. Of course, I think it might be the fox that's outside as well. And there's a dog in the next door neighbor that tends to run over in our yard. And she had spotted that little mongrel. And I'll call it a mongrel because he comes barking like, "Arr!" Even I go and run inside because I don't really, I get a little, uncomfortable around aggressive animals. So to feel safe, But the big thing is emotional safety. And inside of yourself, do you emotionally feel safe with you? And as a result, do you feel you physically do the right things? Let's move on. Why trust is so important is that we need to continue to feel emotionally safe and physically. If there's more trust, there'll be more effectiveness, especially when you're working in a group. You want to share your resources. You feel comfortable with, dividing up the work between each other. You give help to others, and you will accept help from others. And deep down, you know that you are going to mutually accomplish the goals that you have, you know, in your sight. Again, I was sharing with you the biggest thing here is not only the well-being of individuals, but the empowerment of souls and souls coming closer to God and us revealing God's beauty on the planet. It's a really big thing. So trust is important because you want to be effective as a group of people. And when you're effective as a group of people, it requires a lot of communication and a lot of trust. The folks that we work with and we serve together, we'll work like a family. I remember many times when my friends would come over, let's say if Antonia's here, Santoshi's here, Sister Gita's doing her thing, they would literally come to the house and would see each of us committed and working. Like Antonio would be on the computer making sure everything is right, Santoshi's doing his thing. And my friends would literally come and go, wow, they're so dedicated. And I'm right there with everyone, you know? So let's say if one person falls short, then I step in. Let's say if Santosh can't do something, then I'll step in. Because what's the whole trust factor for us? This is God's work. And we're all of his children, we're his instruments. So sometimes I would do things and they would say, oh, sister, you shouldn't be doing this. You're right, I shouldn't be, but I want to, because this is bigger than me. This is about bringing God's energy and God's love to the planet. So why not check in? And I think because of that behavior and that mentality, the trust between us has been very, very deep, very, very strong. Let's move on. So the interpersonal trust in someone is huge because you care for their well-being and you tend to hold information that maybe you won't tell to the whole world. You want to share things that you're not very comfortable yet with the whole world knowing. That's why self-trust is so important. Until you have reconciled and radically accepted what you have been through, it's very hard for you to talk about it to anyone. When I was first sent by Daddy Janky into the centers in New York, and I had just closed down the nightclubs, right? I think we had discontinued the nightclubs like 6 months afterwards. And when Daddy had told me to go to New York and go and stay in the meditation centers and work with the sisters, I was like, okay. And I'm in there and I'm living with 7 sisters. I hadn't known them from anywhere before in my life. And they all seemed so innocent and so sweet and, you know, like they were designed for this path. And what was I doing there? And I just wouldn't say anything. I didn't feel like I had the ability to even share the lifestyle that I had come from, running my clubs and jet setting across the world and making money and, dressing and being the best. When I would walk into the club, everyone had to be looking at me, and not that they had to, I just knew they were. So it's not that they had to look at me, but I just knew that they were going to because of what I was dressed in and how I was carrying myself. And for years, everyone, I would never share what my past was like. And it was 7 years later when I kept hearing people saying, oh, she's so innocent, she's so sweet, she's like a saint, she's so pure. I used to be like, what are they saying? You know? And when I did the soul work, I was like, let me explain. If you think I'm innocent and pure, the only thing that that's done for me is made me realize I must have done some serious work. Here's where I come from. And I remember the big shock that came over on people's faces. But then I had realized, Jen, you really have done some work on yourself. Good for you. Let's move on to the slide. So, oh, can we go back to the other one? Just the other one right before that. Yeah. So there was one part in it that I thought was really important for us to elaborate on. This whole thing about the shared interest and being able to have this interpersonal trust with one another, where you value the well-being of the person and you value the information that they share with you, and there's a commitment in maintaining that together is huge. So it's a personal thing. It's one-on-one, so to speak, or even if you're working in a team, but it's still important. But when you're with a group of people and there's a particular task, is there trust between you and your team members at work? Do you sense that they have the ability to get the job done? And do they follow through? This is such a big thing. Do they follow through with what they begin? Or do they just start it haphazardly and leave it as if it had no value? It's huge in developing trust with the team dynamics. It's hard when people need to rely on you to finish a project, but they know you don't follow up or follow through. Then you can feel like in that area they don't trust you, but you're in that position to be trusted and to follow through. So you can see I can create a lot of conflict, right? Because you're not fulfilling your ability and you're not fulfilling the task. So you can see in the work dynamics how many times you get into difficulties with people. And we can move on to the next one. So, what happens is that if everybody shows up, something I like that I heard many years ago, everyone stays in their lane and knows what it is that they have to do. The machine works. At our headquarters in Mount Abu, India, there are thousands of surrendered volunteers there. And if it's just one guy's duty to make the milk at 3 o'clock in the morning, he will not miss one morning of making milk because he knows it serves thousands of people. And if he doesn't wake up to make the milk, thousands of people are going to be in sorrow. So imagine the economy, for example. Imagine if, let's say there are 10 people and 10 people are asked to put $5 in the till. And every day people collect the money from that, okay? So let's say everything is great. And a month later, one person decides not to put $5 in the till, but they want to collect the money. There's a short, and people start to feel it and they're not sure. But then let's say that that vibration spreads and two more people start to do the same, but they're expecting the same return or the amount of money that was coming in at the beginning. Is that when you start to take just for yourself and you don't think about the greater whole, it creates not only conflict, but it accumulates and exacerbates the energy of mistrust. Mistrust in yourself, because now you don't feel that the destiny or the drama or the universe has in store for you the best. You don't trust in God, and you don't trust in people because you don't trust in you. So you want to take more than you give. Does that make sense? So when you look at it at a collective level, how damaging it can be when you decide to not put your share in. I've seen people in groups. There's always somebody who does 10 times more than the other folks. And somebody will come and do a little bit and want so much in return. It's one of the most painful things I witness. A person will come, will sit, they want all the benefits of what the hard workers are receiving by doing very little. So it creates an imbalance in the society. And why there's such an imbalance economically is that there's some people taking more than they really need. So people aren't trusting each other much anymore. And so the only way we can change that system is to begin to give more than we receive. And if everyone steps up that way, it's going to be a better world. Let's move on. So how can I increase the likelihood that others will find me trustworthy? That's a big thing. I'm still working on that even within my own spiritual community. I think sometimes my elders tend to look for something that I'm not able to offer them right now. And I've sensed it. Sometimes it gives me a little bit of sadness, but in other ways it doesn't. Because I know deeply my heart is real. Back to the story about the lady I was telling you about when I was in the line. I thought these two people were best friends. I've heard this person praise this person, and yet this person was like a horror. But yet with me, if I'm having some issue, then I just won't show up in that false way. And it becomes quite interesting when individuals are speaking to me and I know their motives are not real, that I found myself internally just want to say, could you just be real with me and stop this game? But then I know it, it even makes it worse at times. So there are times that I hold back. But then what happens is that energy of a lack of trust for that person continues. But my heart says, I want to trust the person. And as much as I want the person to trust me, but unless there's an open dialogue and an honest conversation with how you feel with yourself and with one another, it will stay that way for a long time. So today's discussion on trust, I think, was really important because I'd like to end here and leave you with the homework assignment to check again. Do I trust me? Do I trust God? Do I trust people? And do I trust my destiny? Do I trust my future? It has everything to do with intention. Is my intention really driven to reveal for me the beauty and the love of God, God's power and potential? Or is it that I want something in it for me? I've been there where I felt like I just want a little bit of it for me, and then I had to catch myself and go, mm-mm. We go back and forth, we go in and out. But ultimately, deep down, if you're really doing the work, you only want God's love to be revealed. You only want souls to feel God's love so that they don't be afraid and live a life of anxiety and mistrust. So the more trust that I can develop will require my honesty, faith, but belief that it starts with me to trust my future is bright. God has my back. And maybe one by one, I'll develop relationships with people in which my trust will be complete. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our session. Yeah. So it's a very important topic, trust. It's huge. And we need to develop it for ourselves for sure. Okay. Tomorrow's session will be What is Character? And we'll be reading from the Living Values book, as well as doing some meditation and moments of silence. Thank you all very much. Don't forget to tune into America Meditating Radio. As you know, it has some really beautiful shows going on in there. And to keep following us on the YouTube, not follow, let's go together. Can we travel together until this situation is over? We don't know how much longer it'll take. But let's just travel together and be good for one another. Santosh is saying there was a question.
It's coming from Facebook.
Okay, Facebook. Hi, Facebook. I send you vibrations. I send lots of blessings to Facebook, to Zoom, to the inventor of Wi-Fi, internet, to the camera maker.
So, meanwhile, I can just say, Tina says, I am stitching mask right now for someone, I was so anxious of doing it correctly, and listening to you, I realized I have to trust that God is helping me and I can do this.
Thank you. Maybe you can speak up louder so they can catch it on the mic next time. Thank you, Tina. And I'm sure that your maths will come out great. And yes, this is why we need to listen to things that are inspiring and spiritually empowering. I was looking through my phone, and I was seeing a few people that I have been in contact with or that I know. And, I was a little bit like just kind of hoping that they'll find their anchor during this time. They would post interesting posts of things that I thought, that seems a little bit out of character. But then again, I've done things out of character many times. But I was just concerned about them, So, they would praise liquor or wine, or, they're dancing and doing things to keep themselves happy. And all of that is important. And that's why I just invite you, journal. Journal. Write your thoughts down and your feelings. Call a friend. Call somebody wise. Call somebody spiritual. Work on a project that you really want to work on. If you're a doctor and you're at home, I'm thinking about Ritu or other doctors that are out there. Look at ways to deepen your study. Call some of your old patients. Checking on family and friends over the phone. Ask them if they need anything. Until you start to give, you won't feel good. And I liked what Audrey Kitagawa said in one of our sessions about the role of religion. If there's fear or discomfort or anxiety, just keep serving. Just keep serving.
So I have from Mali, Facebook. As we evolve and expand with life and our experiences, I find myself becoming and returning to how I truly am at the core. As this happens, friends and family may become confused and may not understand which of me is more authentic.
Mm.
How do we navigate this in regards addressing to their trust factor for who I am becoming or returning to?
That's a great question, Mali. In time they will. You just continue on your journey of getting to the core. When we change, it's natural for there to be like an uprising or an upsurge or a discomfort, similar to the COVID crisis. Look at how much people have had to change and adapt. In the same way, they're going to adapt to the new you that's being formed. But please, don't let them pull you back to the old you, because there's nothing more beautiful than when we changed and become a better version of who we are. It's the best thing ever. All right, so thank you for your questions, everyone, and thanks for tuning in again. And feel free to just keep sharing any comments or questions, call, email. And for now, I'm going to tune out with you and send you my unlimited love and peace and purity. And I'd like to just hold a moment of silence with you. So just silence, and then I'll ask Santosh to take us into the Om as we clear out the atmosphere and move it out and just become still and create those pure feelings and pure vibrations. Thank you again for joining us. Om Shanti, everyone. Be careful.